Hey guys, welcome back to Wix Fix. I hope you're having a fantastic day. In today's video, we're going to be doing our first web design video in Editor X. And I figured for today's video, we will knock out two birds with one stone, and we're going to be designing the homepage for the brand new Wix Fix website. Now, Editor X is a lot more complex than the classic editor, so I'm going to try to be as thorough as possible. The way that I learned Editor X the quickest was to rewatch tutorials over and over again until it clicked. So don't be afraid to watch this video multiple times or just like the sections where you're confused on. And I'm going to be breaking this video into two parts. For this video, we're going to be doing desktop. In my next upload, we will be doing tablet and mobile. Now my process with Editor X is a lot different than the classic editor. In the classic editor, I was able to build and design at the same time. However, with Editor X, you have to build stuff in a certain way to make sure it functions properly. And so that kind of makes it very hard to design at the same time. With that being said, I typically use a prototyping software like Adobe XD to design my websites first, and then I will develop it inside of Editor X. So that's what we will be doing today. Now I've already uploaded all my assets from the Adobe XD project. I've also already created all my pages, and I've also already changed all my fonts and colors in the site themes. So we are basically ready to get started. The first thing I want to do is create the header. If we look at the design that I created, we have a logo over here on the left, a menu in the middle, and then a little button and cart icon over here on the right. We also have a very thin line on the bottom. So in order to do that in Editor X, what we want to do is click the header, and we're going to press apply grid. We're going to choose the 3x1 option. So now you're going to see it split it into three different sections. However, I kind of want this middle section to be a little bit larger since this will be the largest section in the header. So we're going to go to adjust grid, edit grid, and we're going to click on this 1FR and make this 3FR. And you're going to see it kind of adjusted all the other sections in the grid as well for us automatically. So we're going to go ahead and press done. Now let's go ahead and add our logo over here. So I'm going to come over to add, go down to media and drag out our logo. So as you can see, this is quite large. We don't want it to be that big. So what we want to do is kind of just shrink it down until the width is 100 pixels, just like that. Now, if we were to leave it like this, when we bring in the website, it's going to get super tiny. Or if we go really big, then the logo is going to get really huge. We don't want this. So what we actually have to do is come over here, and there is a minimum width and a maximum width value. So since this was 100 pixels wide, maybe the minimum could be 80 pixels wide and the max can be 110 pixels wide. Now if we shrink the browser, it's going to stop shrinking once it hits 80 pixels. And if we're viewing the website in a very large browser, it's not going to grow any bigger than 110 pixels. This is basically the technique that I use for just about every single floating image inside of Editor X. If you do a stretched image like something like this, then it's completely different, but we're not going to be doing that, and you really don't want to do that for your branding images like your logos. And obviously you want to make sure that scaling proportionately is on. Otherwise, when you shrink down the browser and stuff like that, you're going to get some weird cropping effects like that, which we obviously don't want. So we're going to come back over here, make sure that the scale proportionally is checked on, and we're going to move this into the header. And obviously we want to make sure it's on the left side of this grid line. And then as you can see right now, it is docked to the top and it's docked to the left. I don't want it docked to the top, so if you come over here into the inspector panel and press align to middle, it's going to remove the docking from the top. Then if we look at the margins, it is 24% away from the edge of the website. For this, I actually just want to use pixels, and we're just going to set it to 80% or 80 pixels. Next, let's go ahead and do the menu right here. So we're going to come over to add, go to menu, and we're just going to drag this one out right here. Now I've already created a menu based on what pages I want in my header. But if you did not already set up your menu, you can come over to manage menu and you can add pages to the menu, or you can add links or sub menu titles. And then if you want to add a second menu to your website, then you can come over to this drop down, go to manage site menus, and you can add a new menu. But for now, that looks pretty fine. However, we do want to change the font. So it's Poppins Light. we're going to make this 14 pixels, and we're going to make sure that the colors for the regular, hover, and clicked are all the same colors that we want to use. And then if we shrink in the browser, we're going to notice it goes to more, which we don't want that. We want to uncheck the option that says all items are the same size. So it's going to do that. It's going to give us more space. And then what we want to do is come over to the inspector panel and set this to maybe something like 80%, something maybe like 70%, something like that. And then of course we don't want it to dock to the top, so we want to align it to the middle. If it docked to the top, then when we shrink down the browser, then some elements would get closer to the top, and we don't want that. It would look uneven. So of course we just want to align it to the middle, so it's stuck to the middle. Now the right side had a button and a cart icon. So what we're going to come over here and do is come over to store and add a little cart, just like that. And we're also going to come over to quick add and just do a button. Now let's go ahead and stylize the button first. What we want it to do is have a fill of this color. We want to remove the border. Let's add like 10 pixel radius. Text needs to be Poppins Light, 14 pixels. Remove the bold, and we're going to make it white. Then for hover, the fill just needs to be this peachy orange like that. Now let's go ahead and edit this cart button. So we're going to press settings. Let's go ahead and choose this option right here. For the bubble color, we don't want it to be that. We want it to be this one right here. For the font, we want to make sure it's Poppins Light, and we'll make sure it's just set to this off-white color like that. Next, if we just put these over here inside this header, when we shrink down the browser, they're going to kind of overlap each other and not look very nice. So what we actually have to do is use a container box with a grid. So if we pull out this container box, and we can shrink it down quite a bit because we don't need it that large. Then what we can do is apply a grid to it, and we can go ahead and put this cart icon in here. Okay, and as of right now, it is docked to the right, which is fine, but we're gonna remove how far it is docked to the right. But then we're gonna add 20 pixels of margin to the left. Okay, next let's go ahead and move the button into this left part of the grid. If we look right down here, we can see it's docked to the top. We can either press this little handle and it'll undock it, or we can just press align to middle and it'll undock it for us there as well. Now you may be saying that this looks like way too much space, and you're right. So what we need to do is come over to adjust grid, edit grid, and we're gonna come over to this 1FR and change this to max content. Okay, and that's basically what it does. So it took the space of this plus the 20 pixels that we had for spacing, and it shrunk down the rest of it, which is exactly what we want. And then we can bring this in just a little bit like that. And while we have the container selected, we can come over to the design and completely remove the border completely. So now let's go ahead and drag this box over here to the right hand side of the header. And then what we want to do is we can see it is docked to the left and the top. So what we want to do is actually dock it to the right and remove the docking from the other sides, just like that. We want to align it to the middle, and we want this to be 80 pixels from the right hand side. And if we preview our website, this is what our website's going to look like. But of course, we still need to add the line. So what we're going to do is come over to add. We'll just do quick add and do a line. So what we want to do is kind of stretch this to across all three grid parts. Then we're going to set it to 100%, and we are going to align it to the center and then put it at the bottom. And then if we come over to the design tab, we're going to make it only 1 pixel width. We're going to set the color opacity to 20%. Also, it may be beneficial to add min and max values to the buttons, similarly to what we did with the logo over here. So maybe since this one is 142 pixels wide, maybe it can go down to 130 pixels and then max 150 pixels. Now we are done with the header, and we can go ahead and start beginning work on the hero section. So for this one, let's go ahead and set it to like 1,000 pixels high for now. We're going to go ahead and come over to the add panel. We're going to go to media, and we're going to use one of the images. Paste in this image right here, and we're going to stretch it to the full width of this section. The next thing I want to add is my little icons, and I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste it and bring the second one like over here. All right, next let's go ahead and add an image. So I'm just going to drag this out right here. I'm going to shrink this down quite a bit, and I kind of want to overlapping these icons a little bit. Then I'm gonna copy and paste it in, bring it down here, and maybe this one can be a little bit wider. Okay, I'm gonna copy and paste it one more time, bring it over here, and we're just going to do something like this. So now let's go ahead and change the images. Next, let's go ahead and click the settings icon, and under scroll behavior, let's go ahead and set it to parallax, and we'll do that for each one of these. And then what we want to do is come over to the design tab, and for under corners, we're gonna add 10 pixel radius on all of them. If we scroll over to the right hand side, we're gonna notice that there is some added space to the right hand side of our website. And that's because of these icons right here. So to prevent that, what we wanna do is select the image. We're gonna go to the breadcrumbs and select the section. Then in the inspector panel under overflow content, we're gonna choose the option for hide. Basically what that's doing is hiding any content that exceeds the width of the website. Next, if we look over here at my design, we have the partner badge, we have some light text, heavy text, and then a button. So let's go ahead and do that inside of Editor X. So the first thing we have is that little icon. So let's go ahead and add that. And obviously it's gonna be pretty big. So what I kind of want it to do is just like the logo, we're gonna shrink it down until it's about, let's say 100 in width. And then we're gonna set it to 90 pixels minimum and 110 pixels maximum. Next, let's go ahead and add some text, and we'll add some more text. And I'm just going to copy and paste the button from the header. So for this text right here, what we want it to do is we want it to be heading 3, and it's gonna say learn Wix fast. Okay, and then we want it centered up. And then maybe we can add a little bit of character spacing. For this next text, we want it to be heading 1, and we want this one to be quite large. So what I want to do first is go ahead and set this one to be about like 80%, something crazy large for right now. We're gonna have it centered up, and I'm just gonna go ahead and paste in the text. Now, I don't want it to have auto spacing, so I'm just gonna go ahead and shrink it down, and we're gonna center it up on the page. We're gonna center this one up on the page, center this on the page. So the next thing I wanna do is set up scaling text. So in order to do that, you can open up the text options, and you'll see this option for scale text. This lower number is the pixel size of the font on a mobile device. Biggest number is gonna be for desktop, which we're gonna do 40. And we're gonna go ahead and do that for this one as well. Mobile, we kind of want this one to be kind of large, so 30. But then on desktop, we want this one to be pretty large, so maybe like 70. Now let's make sure everything is centered. Then we're gonna grab everything and press stack. Now I'm gonna grab the stack and center it up inside of this section right here. Now this is a lot larger than I wanted it to be. So what I actually want to do is click the background, click the section, and instead of it being 1000 pixels, I want it to be 90 VH. And basically what that means is that this section is gonna take 90% of the user's screen, no matter what screen size that they are on. And as the user scrolls, we're gonna see that. Now you can see that this is causing a little bit of an issue right here. So we can just kind of scoot it up a little bit. And honestly, I'm just gonna bring it down a little bit because it doesn't need to be that big. And then I'm also gonna go ahead and add 30 pixels of margin to the bottom. That way, just in case on some screen sizes, this can't go closer than 30 pixels to the edge. So now if we resize the browser, this is what we're gonna see. Now obviously you're gonna see those images get really, really tiny, and we don't want that. So we need to do what we did with this and the logo and just set a minimum and maximum. But you might be saying like, how can we tell what the pixel width is? So if we switch it over to pixel, then we're gonna see this one is set to 200 pixels. Then we can switch it back to percentages. So now that we know that it's 206 pixels, we can set a minimum of maybe like 160 pixels and a maximum of 220 pixels. And we kind of just do this same effect for each one of these images. So now if we preview the site again, we're gonna see that they shrink down, but they stop shrinking once they hit a certain level. All right, now we are done with the hero section. Let's go ahead and add our next section on our website. If we hover on the bottom line of a section with a section selected, we're gonna see a little icon that says add section. It's gonna allow us to add a blank one, a section with a grid, or a section with a layouter. For this option, we're gonna go ahead and press blank. Now what I wanna do is go ahead and add a container to this section. In this container, I do want to add a grid, so we're going to press apply grid and add a grid. Next, I want to edit the grid, and I want this one to be 280 pixels. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add an image into this section right here, and we'll stretch it to the full width. I went ahead and changed the image, but of course we want to come over here and add the 10 pixel radius like we did with these images up here. And then over here on the right hand side, I do want to add some text. So we're going to go ahead and add a title. We're going to add a paragraph. And just like before, we're going to copy and paste a button in. We'll leave this one on the left hand side for now. We're going to set both of these, the title and the paragraph, to 80% width of this grid section. For this title, we want it to be heading 6. For this paragraph, we want to set it to paragraph 3. And just for fun, we're going to go ahead and make sure that the font color is something like a dark gray, just to kind of switch things up a little bit. Okay, and then over here, we want to add the button. It's going to say learn more. And I don't want it to be this size, so we're going to do something like 35 pixels, and maybe the minimum can be 100. Okay, so I went ahead and pasted in all my text. I'm going to go ahead and select everything and press stack. Now I'm going to go ahead and come over to the inspector panel and just make sure it's centered. Now I'm going to grab this box and I'm going to go ahead and make sure it is centered inside of this section. I'm going to add 100 pixels of margin to the top and 100 pixels of margin to the bottom. Then I'm going to come over to the design tab and completely remove the border. And now I'm going to select the background section and completely remove the height. And basically what that is saying is that the height of this section is completely dependent on this section plus the 100 pixel of margin up here and the 100 pixel margin below. So now if we preview the site and we bring in the website, this is what we're going to see. We're going to see that everything is kind of getting a lot more squished. So what we need to do is grab this section. We're going to actually come over 2 pixels and we're going to see it's set to 800 pixels wide. So what we want to do is come over to minimum and set a minimum of 600 pixels and a maximum of 1000 pixels. So now when we shrink down the website, everything should go with it, which I don't like that this text wraps. So what we want to do is come back here, we'll grab the section and maybe we do 700 pixels right here. So now when this section shrinks to 700 pixels, it's going to stop shrinking just like that. Perfect. Okay, now we're done with this section. So we're going to go ahead and add the next section to our website and we're going to make it blank. Now I kind of don't want these to kind of flow into each other right here. So I kind of want to make sure that this section up here, we're going to set the background color to straight white. That way this section is completely separate to this one. And then what I want to do is go ahead and set this one to a crazy height, like 2500 pixels. And then what I want to do is go ahead and apply a grid to it. And we're going to do 1 by 2. Then we're going to go ahead and edit the grid. And we're actually going to set this one to 300 pixels, just like that. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and add a container box to this top one, and we're going to go ahead and stretch it to the full width of the screen. Of course, we want to remove the border, and we're going to go ahead and apply a grid to it. And we're just going to do 2 by 1. And since we're already in the inspector panel, let's go ahead and add 80 pixels of margin to the left and the right. We're going to go ahead and add a title and a paragraph over here. And then over here to the right, we're going to add some buttons, but we'll get to that in just a minute. For this title, let's go ahead and do it 90 pixels or 90% width. And we're going to go ahead and stick it to the left. And let's go ahead and do like 60% for the paragraph. And we're going to stick to the left as well. For this one, we want to make sure that we are on heading 3. For this one, we want to make sure we're on paragraph 2. And we're going to make sure it's 16 pixels. Okay, let me just go ahead and copy in our content. Okay, and then for this one, we're going to make sure it's dark gray. We'll go ahead and set this to 50% instead of 60. Then we're going to come over here, grab both of them and press stack. And then just like before, we want to center it horizontally. That way it also undocks it from the top and keeps it docked to the left. And then over here, we want to add some buttons. So what I want to do is, of course, just copy and paste this over. And for this button, we're going to do something a little bit different. So for this one, we want it to be light gray, and text, we want it to be a little bit darker of a gray, like that. And for the roundness, let's just go ahead and set it to 50 because we want this one to be fully rounded. And then on hover, we want it to be this color right here. Let's go ahead and set these up. Okay, now that I have changed the text for the buttons, I don't want there to be space on either side of the text. So I'm just gonna kind of shrink them down a little bit. And then just like before, when we shrink in the browser, they're gonna start overlapping each other. So we don't want that to happen. So what we kind of need to do is the same thing that we did up here for these, is create a container box, split it into a grid, set each button with a 20 pixel margin, and set each part of the grid to be max content. So let's go ahead and set that up. So we're gonna come over to add container. We'll just drag this in. We'll make this fairly short. Let's just go ahead and make this as long as we need it to be. And then we're gonna go ahead and apply a grid to it. So this first one, we're gonna drag in here. We're gonna drag this one here and this one in here just like that. Okay, we're gonna come over to the inspector panel. Of course, we wanna make sure it's not docked to the top. We're gonna set this to 0% to the left. And we're gonna do that for each one of these buttons real quick. Now for each of the buttons, let's go ahead and add 20 pixels of margin to the left, which this last one doesn't really matter, but we'll go ahead and do it for that one as well. Next, select the container box, press adjust grid, and then we're gonna set each one of these to max content. And we're actually gonna leave the last one as is, because if we set this one to max content, it's going to shift everything to the left and we won't be able to edit it, and it makes it very difficult. So we don't want to actually do that. So we're gonna undo that one, press done, and then we can just bring in this one manually, just like that. While we have the box selected, let's open up the design panel and completely remove the border. And then we're gonna go ahead and bring this up to where it is in line with this header text. We're gonna come over to the inspector panel and we are going to dock it to the right and remove the docking from the top. Now let's go ahead and set this to 0. And it's gonna bring it all the way to the right for us. And before I forget, let's go ahead and select the section. We're gonna come down to scroll effect and press sticky. For the next part of the section that we're gonna be building is we're gonna be building this section. Now I've already made a tutorial on that before in the past, and I don't really want to cover it again. So I will have a link in the description for you. But if you've already seen that, then enjoy this little time lapse. So basically what we just created is a section where this title text stays there while the user scrolls down, and then these tiles float in, and then as the user continues to scroll, then everything will start floating up. They're not floating up very far because we don't have the next section built yet, but they will. Also, if you're wondering where I am getting these icons from, it's from a website called Lord Icon. They have over 1,500 animated, really cool icons. So if you're interested in using them for your website, I will have a link in the description below. Now let's go ahead and add our next section. So for this one, we're gonna do blank. And then the first thing I want to do is just go ahead and add a line. And we're gonna set this line to be 92 pixels in width. We're gonna have it centered, but we're gonna have it at the top of the section. Of course, we're gonna have it only be 1 pixel width, and we're only gonna set it to 20% opacity. So we're gonna have this line here. But as I am scrolling, you're gonna see that these tiles are gonna go underneath this text, which we don't want these to show up. So something I forgot to do earlier is if we select the section and come over to the design tab, we wanna make sure that this one has a background color set to 100%, just like that. So now when we preview and everything starts going up, then these things are gonna go behind that section and it's gonna look like that. And then this line is gonna stop right here and bring everything else up with it. So that looks pretty clean. Again, if you wanna see how I made this section, I do have a tutorial on that already. So for this next section, it's basically gonna be like a little text about our shop with buttons that link to our asset shop and our template shop. Then the next sections are gonna be, a call to action for our latest asset and then our latest template. But right now we're just gonna be focusing on this one right here. So let's go ahead and build that. So similarly to what we did up here, we're basically gonna basically replicate this section completely. So what I actually want to do is just copy this text right here. I'm gonna come down to this section and I'm just gonna add a container. This container, we want it to be 100% width. We want it to be centered. We want to apply a grid to it so we have a left and right hand side. We also want there to be 80 pixels of padding on the left and the right hand side. And then we're just going to paste in that text that we took from the other section, just like that. So now what we want to do is center this inside of this section, this grid section. And we want to make sure that the margin is set to 0. Then over here, we want to add 2 buttons, which of course we're going to follow the same technique we used for this one. But I'm going to copy this button right here. Okay, and then we're just going to paste it in, and we're going to go ahead and paste 2. And just like we did before, we're going to pull out a container. We're going to apply a grid to it, 2 by 1, since we only have 2 buttons. We're going to pull the first button in here, the second button into the left hand side of this grid. And then for this one, of course, we want to align it to the center and make sure that the right margin is set to 0. And the left margin, we want 20 pixels. And we're going to do the same exact thing for this left button. Okay, now we can select the container box, press adjust grid. And for the one on the right, we're going to go ahead and set it to max content. Now we can go ahead and drag this up so it's in line with our header text over here. Inside the inspector panel, of course, we want to remove the docking from the top and remove the margin from the right hand side. Then in the design tab, we want to remove the border from the box. And we want to do the same exact thing for the main box as well. Okay, and for this box, we kind of want there to be 80 pixels of margin on the bottom and top. And then for this section, we're going to remove the height completely. So again, just like this section right here, this section is purely based on the height of this content and then plus 80 pixels on the top and bottom. All right, now let's go ahead and add the next section. For this one, let's go ahead and set it to 800 pixels. We're gonna go ahead and apply a grid to it, just 2 by 1, just like that. And over here on the left, we wanna add an image, and we're gonna go ahead and stretch it to the full width of the screen. And let's go ahead and change the image to something else. Okay, next let's go ahead and add another image. And for this one, I'm actually gonna choose one of my image overlays. And we're gonna go ahead and stretch it to the full width of the screen. Now, if I preview, there is like a 1 pixel mistake right here where we can see the image behind it. So what we wanna do is actually come over to our layers panel, come into the section, we're gonna choose the background image, and we're gonna add like 20 pixels of margin to the right. And that should push the image over just enough so we do not get that mistake anymore. However, I do want to come over to that image, come over into the settings and make sure that we have parallax put on the image. That way we get this effect right here. Of course, we can't really see what's going on, so I can either choose a different image or I can try to mess with the focal point just a little bit, which I think I'm just gonna do something like right here. And that should be fine enough. Then over here on the right hand side, we want to add some text about our image overlay pack. So I'm just going to go ahead and just grab this stack right here, come all the way over here and just paste it in. And temporarily, I'm just going to go ahead and unstack everything. Then I'm going to copy and paste this paragraph text, put it on top, and we're going to have it say latest Wix Fix assets. And for this title, I do want it to be larger, and we're actually gonna do the scaling text for this one. So I want it to be 40 pixels on desktop and maybe like 24 pixels on mobile. And of course we can stretch it out a lot more so that we're not dealing with the wrapping text. And then let's just select everything and restack it. Then we're gonna grab this stack and then we're just going to center it up inside this section. That way it's not docked to anything. But when we press preview, this is what we're gonna see. It looks really clean. The next thing I'm gonna do is just go ahead and copy and paste this section completely. So it's gonna completely duplicate it. For this left side, we're just gonna delete both images. Then we're gonna bring this text from the right over to the left and we're gonna center it up here. And then we're gonna go ahead and add an image of our template. And we're just gonna bring it in here and center it. Now I forgot to change the text here, so let me go ahead and do that. So this should say image overlays and the button should say get now. For this text, it should say latest Wix Fix template. This is gonna be the template name. Okay, and we are basically done with this section. Now I want to add another section. And this next section is actually going to be the call to action for my users to subscribe to my newsletter. Now, if you're already a subscriber, then you know I never send these out. However, you do get a couple freebies with it. You get the SEO checklist and the branding worksheet. Now, I actually redid the SEO checklist so that it has a whole other page of useful content and information that you may need to know for your SEO. So be sure to subscribe and make sure that you download the brand new SEO checklist. Over here to the left, we want to have some text and an input field for people to subscribe. And then over here to the right, we're going to have image with both of the freebies. So what we want to do is go ahead and apply a grid 2 by 1. And then the first thing I actually want to do is go ahead and add a line just like that. We're going to set this one to 92%. We're going to align it to the center and send it to the top. We only want it to be 1 pixel and 20% opacity. Next, let's go ahead and add a subscribe form. So we're going to come over to add, contact form, subscribe, and we're just going to use this one right here. Okay, and while that's generating, let's go ahead and add the image over here to the right. Now, obviously, this is quite large, doesn't need to be that big, but we're just going to bring it over here and, of course, center it up. Okay, and then for this, let's go ahead and set it to 70%. And we're going to go ahead and dock everything to the left and remove the margins. So we're going to do that for each one of these right here. So for this text, we want to say want some freebies. And we want this one to have scaling text. So we're going to do something like 30 and 50, something like that. Next, let's go ahead and add a paragraph in here. Let's do like 10 pixel margin there, and then let's do like 20 pixel a margin below. We're going to set this to 100%, and I'm just going to paste in some text just like that. And let's go ahead and actually set it to 90%, so that way competition isn't all by itself down below. And of course, we're going to dock it to the left and remove the mark. And it doesn't look like this is the right font, so we're just going to make sure. Let's go ahead and make this, okay, and then let's go ahead and center up this field just like that. And let's go ahead and add 80 pixels a margin above, 80 pixels a margin below. And then for the input field, let's go ahead and design it. So the fill is going to be white. It's going to be pure white. I'm going to remove the border completely. The text needs to be Poppins Light, 14 pixels, and we're going to remove the italics. Next, let's go ahead and check hover, focus, and air. And just like the other components on the website, let's go ahead and add a 10 pixel radius to this input field. So now we got kind of like this nice rounded look. And now we need to make this submit button look like our other buttons on the website, which is not hard to do. So what we want to do is make sure that the alignment for the button is set to middle. Then in the panel over here, we want the background to be this color right here. Text to be Poppins Light, 14 pixels. Remove the italics and make sure it's white. And then for this button, let's go ahead and set it to pixels. We're going to go ahead and set it to 100. We're going to set the height to 35. And margin, let's go ahead and add 15 pixels to the bottom, just so there is some separation between the thank you message and submit. And then for this thank you message, I'm going to remove the padding from the bottom. Since it says thank you for submitting, we're going to make sure that this is Poppins Light, of course. And then here we want it to say download your freebies here. And here is going to link to the freebies claim page. And we're also going to change the color to this orange. And something I forgot to do with this button, of course, is make sure that we add the 10 pixel radius. And of course, we need to check hover and make sure it looks good here as well. Now, the only thing left to do is the footer. So for this one, what we're going to go ahead and do is do 380 pixels in height. We're going to make the background color this dark blue. We're going to apply a grid, and although I have plans to do more stuff with the footer later, let's just go ahead and add 3 by 1 for now. Then I want to add 80 pixels to the right and left, and maybe 40 pixels on the top and bottom. The first thing I want to add to this is the light version of our logo. We want to shrink this down to where it says 100 pixels in width, and then of course here we want to set this to 80 pixel minimum, and then 110 pixel max. And what we're going to do is go ahead and stick it right here. Next, I'm just going to copy some text from the other parts of our website. I'm going to paste it in. I'm going to stick it right here. Make sure that there's no margin on the left, and remove the docking from the top. And I'm going to change the text to our slogan, to learn Wix fast. Then I'm going to copy and paste it again. Make sure it's not docked to the top. And then I'm going to paste in some text just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a social bar as well. So I just need to come to add, embed in social, social bar, and we're just going to drag out this one right here. Now I'm not going to set up the links or anything right now to save some time, but I am going to design it. So I want the icon size to be 20 and the spacing to be 4 pixels, which that looks nice right there. Next, let's go ahead and add a menu. So I want the menu to be a vertical menu here, and we're just going to drag out this one right here, which looks really nice, which we're going to edit, don't worry. And for this menu, we want it to be the footer menu. As of right now, these are the exact same, but in the future, these will be changed. And maybe even on the live site, they'll be changed. And we're going to come over to the design tab. We're going to remove the background text. We're going to make sure it is set to our font. Make sure it's set to 14 pixels. And even though I don't have a sub menu, I typically like setting this up just in case in the future, me or clients want to add any sort of sub menu. So even though I don't have one as of right now, I do typically like just setting it up just to make sure. And then if we come over to the selected tab, we'll make sure that this is set to the correct color. And as of right now, that's all I want to put in the footer. On the live site, things may be a little different, but for now, I really like this design. This is basically our home page. Now, if we shrink stuff down, you know, some stuff may need to be tweaked, but for the most part, things actually look pretty nice. Now, each one of these sections, just like we used up here, for this container box, for these stacks, we can also set a minimum and maximum width. You know, let's change this one to pixels, so it's 500 pixels as of right now. But let's say we don't want it going below 450 pixels, and we don't want it any larger than 600 pixels. And we can kind of do that with all of them. But now when we look at it, this is what it's going to show. Basically, besides that, that is how you make websites in Editor X. Now, like I mentioned before, the next video will be for tablet and mobile. But that basically wraps it up for the video today, guys. If you guys did enjoy, please consider subscribing for more Wix content and Editor X content coming out really soon. Thank you guys again, and I'll see y'all in the next one.